Welcome everybody to another edition of WCW 2004 here in TEW 2020, and it's a special edition of the show here as we're doing a preview of the annual Mayhem tournament. Of course, the tournament doesn't start until November, but obviously can't have you guys doing predictions as the tournament's going on. So, of course, throughout the month of October, while we're building up to Halloween Havoc, I'll be pushing the pick'em here for people to take part in. And of course, to take part in, you go to the site here, challenge.com/2004mayhem. I'll include a link in the description, of course, and, on the Reddit post where I post this and anywhere else where I happen to post this. And, again, signing up, to do a prediction is not that difficult. Needing to create an account, but, that's any site. And then, first let me go over the prizes. So again, if you win the predictions, you get a match at the January pay-per-view of your choice, outside of the world title main event, a wrestler brought up from developmental, a dev signing of your choice, a dev release of your choice, one push and D-push of a wrestler on the roster. And again, as I've said before, this is a case where if you choose D-push, that person will be jobbing to, the lowest guy on the roster in a week, or if you push a guy, he'll be in the world title scene immediately. Again, for example, last year somebody wanted to push Ian Skipper. Now he's been Cruiserweight champion for the last, basically last half of the year, and they wanted to D-push Keenan, and as a result, Kenyon's basically been sort of like in the upper mid-card for most of the year. And also one firing of a member of the WWF in-game roster. And how it's going to do is there's going to be like 3 or 4 people who are off limits just for like game balance reasons and because like historical reasons, which I'll explain to the person who wins. But outside of that, anybody you want. And then what will happen is I will roll a die to determine when they're taken off TV, and then I will roll another die to determine when they're actually released. So for example, I'm going to roll a die basically from like beginning of next year in game to WrestleMania in game. And then, so it gets February of week 2, and then I'm going to roll the die for basically immediately to 12 months from when they actually get released from their contract. So, it might be February of week 2, and then if I roll a 4, that means they don't get released until June of week 2 in game. And then, it'll determine by other stuff, like whether they actually get signed up by me and all that other fun stuff. Again, for second place, you get a title match of your choice at a Nitro. Again, nobody decides who wins because I'm still the booker here, man. A push and a D-push of your choice. And again, if there's any conflict, whoever gets higher gets their choice, and I'll just make the other person choose theirs. For example, if first place wants somebody to push somebody and the second place wants to D-push somebody, then obviously first place wins, and I'll just ask whoever finished in second to choose another wrestler to push. And a day of signing of your choice. And then for third place, you get a match at a Nitro of your choice and a dev signing of your choice. And finally, if I get 10 total predictions, there'll also be a random drawing from everybody who put a prediction to win, and we'll have a match on Nitro of their choice as well. I've opened other prizes as well. It just depends on how many predictions I get. Now to go over things again. So, here's the whole, I'll go over this. So again, to do a prediction, you go to the site, you sign up, you click on create a prediction, and then once you have your, you sign up and everything, again, it'll ask you for a name of the prediction, okay. So you choose who you want to win, again, all the other people. And again, I've gone over this before in the initial announcement, at the end of the pay-per-view video, but, upsets do happen. So, don't go all chalk. I'm not going to tell you who's obviously going to get upset and take these picks I'm doing just at random into zero consideration. But again, weird things happen in tournaments. Somebody could go on a Cinderella run. Somebody could go on a, but someone could actually go on a domino run. Look at how I booked, the tournament last year. Not everybody there was one of the top seeds. But also there were some top seeds there as well. And again, remember, since the finals is a 4-man ladder match at the end, that means that even though, on the site it'll determine, I don't care who you put as the other finalist. It only matters who you pick to win. So here, our finals is AJ and Blitz, and you've picked AJ as the winner. So again, for your prediction title, you can either just leave it blank if you're okay with your going by email, or if you want to be contacted via Reddit or however else you want to put in, say user Bob Wrestling, or or if you're anywhere else where, or any other Viacom, or, Ken on Twitter, or whatever, or whatever you want, or if you're okay with email, just put whatever prediction title you want, and that's okay as well. You hit submit, and there you go. Nothing too off the rails there. But now we're actually going to go to the tournament, match by match, and give a little preview of the tournament just to give you guys a little more background and help you out maybe with your predictions. So I'll be back with that in just a moment. And we start with our first match of the tournament, which is going to be the number 1 seed, Rob Van Dam, taking on Ray LePen. Of course, Rob Van Dam has been, one of the more successful wrestlers here in WCW, who have not held the world title so far. But, Ray LePen is a young, hungry wrestler who has made a bit of an impact so far in his WCW career. Not a whole ton of, big moments, but, could be a big part of the future here. And, of course, could pull off the huge upset here in the first round, but also Rob Van Dam is a very tough competitor and could easily just roll through on his way to being able to, call his shot anytime for the World Championship. And in a big first round match, it's going to be Jeff Hardy taking on Tank Toland. Hardy's a little bit low here in seeding, but he's had a rough couple months, and obviously I'm not doing this directly just by winning record, even though I was tempted to do that just for fun. But Jeff Hardy, he's a former U.S. champion, been involved in big matches, but hasn't quite made that jump up to the tippy top level here in WCW. He's had a world title shot, and he's going to face on Tank Toland, who's been also impressive as a newcomer since coming up to the main roster. He's arrogant. He thinks he's the sexiest man in World Championship Wrestling, and he has Don Marie as a manager, so it'll be a very dangerous match for Hardy if he doesn't take it seriously. But of course, Jeff Hardy is a risk taker, and he could take the big risk here and move on to the second round, setting up a big second round match between him and RVD, or it could be, one of the newcomers taking the upset and creating a big match, or a variety of things that could happen here in the first and second round. But now moving on to the next match. At first, this match may seem a bit of a, dominant win for one competitor, as Mike Awesome has been very successful here in WCW, multi-time tag team champion, part of big matches. And Ron Simmons, has just recently come into WCW. In fact, he hasn't officially debuted so far here in World Championship Wrestling. But of course, he is a former world champion, and he's had a very successful career up north. And he's a big brawler, a tough dude. And if there's anybody who can stand up to Mike Awesome and demand, that he could quickly get the big upset and move on his road to reclaim the world championship, or Mike Awesome could prove, why he was the king of extreme for so long in Philadelphia. But what should be a very tough, hard-hitting match that will not involve a lot of technical ability on either side. Speaking of extreme, of course, Brother Ray is another relative newcomer here at WCW. He's been here a couple months. He's been involved in his own little feuds, not quite rising to the top, but he's a dangerous brawler. He was very successful all around, everywhere he's worked so far. And of course, he's just a big badass and could just brawl with the best of them. His opponent, Eric Harris, of course, turned on his longtime tag team partner, and is an underdog here, but he's been a sneaky SOB since turning on his tag partner, so who knows what tricks he has to pull out against Brother Ray. But it'll be a tall order for the former member of Air Raid. Of course, whoever wins here could set up some interesting second round matches, as Brother Ray would take another member of the Extreme, Mike Awesome. He could be taking on a former world champion, which could be another tough brawl. Or Eric Harris could pull off the upset here and face another big challenge in the second round, but we'll just have to see about that. Another interesting first round matchup as the former WCW World Champion Eddie Guerrero takes on Blitzkrieg. Eddie has to be the big favorite here, but of course, Blitzkrieg is a former Cruiserweight champion. He's one of the best high flyers in the game, so he could shock Eddie Guerrero here. But of course, Eddie, since turning on his own nephew and the fans, has been very aggressive. So Blitz has a tall order here, as does a lot of people who are the underdogs of the first round. But anything can happen. And, maybe some family business could get involved here, or maybe Eddie just might be too cocky and get surprised. But Blitzkrieg is a tough competitor, but Eddie, of course, is one of the best in the world. I tell you, he's the best in the world, but he's not the world champion right now. And then there's our next first round matchup, which is actually quite the interesting first round matchup, as it's probably our most evenly one so far. As Jamie Noble takes on Chavo Guerrero. Of course, Chavo Guerrero is the current WCW Tag Team Champion. We'll have to see if he's still that by the time the Mayhem tournament starts. Of course, Jamie Noble has been very successful in WCW, especially over the past year. He shocked the world by defeating Eddie Guerrero, and would say that started Eddie Guerrero's downfall, along with his world title loss. And of course, got in a feud with it. Was involved in big feuds with both Goldberg and Jeff Hardy. But now, both of these men have a reason to want to take on Eddie Guerrero in the next round if Eddie wins. Noble, of course, wants to prove his big win wasn't a fluke, even if they're on the same side of the ledger as far as, who's cheered or booed by the fans at the moment. And Chavo, of course, wants to, prove to his nephew, to prove to his Uncle Eddie that he's at the same tier of wrestler as he is. And of course, these men probably don't like each other much anywhere because of the ways they've gotten each other's business. So that could set up, some big matches in the second round. It could be, obviously, if Blitzkrieg wins, either match is going to be a huge, sort of like a big cruiserweight battle. But if Eddie wins, it's going to either be a, rematch of Jamie Noble's big win, first huge win here in WCW, or a family battle between Eddie Guerrero and Chavo Guerrero Jr. So it'll be very interesting to see who picks up the win here and moves on. And an interesting match in here in the first round, as Alex Wright will take on Prince Osei. Of course, Alex Wright is the favorite here, but we haven't actually seen Prince Osei a lot in the ring, and he is a very talented competitor, and of course has lots of resources due to his background being a Prince of Ghana. So who knows what tricks he may pull off the big win here. But Alex Wright is a current tag team champion. Who knows if he will be by the end of it, by the time the tournament starts. And honestly, one of the wrestlers have been having the better past year or so. So this could be his time to go on a run, or he could get a massive road bump here in the first round and fall to Prince Osei. We'll just have to see. And another match that has to be, again, one of the closest. It's a huge rematch of the feud we had over the past few months, a couple months ago, as two former U.S. champions meet as Tajiri takes on Keenan Sharp. Of course, both of these men have fought each other. Tajiri, seemed to win the feud as he walked out as U.S. champion, but Sharp wants his revenge and wants to go back on that path of victory. And of course, he would tell you this is all part of his path to become at the top of WCW. Well, Tajiri wants to prove, that his U.S. title wasn't a fluke and move on in the tournament. And of course, if they win, they'll either have a big match against Alex Wright and sort of honestly, a match between three people who probably should be pushed harder, but who have been sort of stuck in the mid-card, upper mid-carder with below the other big stars, or they'll be taking on a Prince Osei who got a shocker of a win. Either way, it'll be an interesting match, clash of styles between all four of these men, and determine who will eventually move on to, onto the third round, round 16, in a while. But this match should be, honestly, probably one of the better matches of the first round. Speaking of interesting matches in the first round, Rey Mysterio Jr. will take on leader of the Roman Empire, Jonathan Toro. And, Mysterio and Toro have run into each other a couple times before. Of course, Toro has gotten several big wins, including defeating the Legend Sting on Revolution. And Rey Mysterio Jr., has been involved in his own feuds. So, this is a battle of, one could say the present versus the future, or possibly, the future versus the future, just when exactly in the future we're talking about, as Toro, of course, leads the Roman Empire and wants to, lead a restoration of that empire to the top of WCW, or Rey Mysterio Jr. is one of the most talented wrestlers in the world, and, maybe luck, his size, or just, the booker deciding not to push him yet, may decide why he hasn't been at the top of the mountain yet. But, we have, Toro's power and his stablemates at ringside, and Rey Mysterio Jr., of course, could be argued, is the best high flyer in the world still, and could pull off a victory here quite easily. Next up will be a very tough match for Jason Jett, as, he'll be taking on Chuck Palumbo, one of the highest, rising stars here in WCW. In fact, some people on the internet believe that the booker is stupid and should have put him as the world champion instead of Sean O'Haire. But, what do dorks on the internet know? Joking. Honestly, they might be right, but I have some plans for Palumbo. But regardless, He'll have a big first round match here against Jason Jett, as Jett, of course, recently turned heel and is become a little bit more aggressive, but he'll have a tall challenge here in Chuck Palumbo, who has gone from strength to strength here in WCW, along with his, brother in arms, Sean O'Haire, the current world champion. And speaking about the future, we have two very different visions of the future here in WCW. And of course, we have Mark Jindrak, who's a member of the Chosen Few, along with Jeff Jarrett and simply Johnny Devine, who's, a powerhouse, a big heel, and, sort of looks like what a professional wrestler should be in many people's minds. And of course, we have AJ Styles, who's no slouch himself, but, is part of a new breed of high-flying, exciting, high-impact professional wrestler. And one of these two men will move on to the second round, and they'll have a chance, for a big victory here. But of course, to go back for a second, of course, second round matchup for the past match could be a huge, babyface war between Palumbo and Rey Mysterio Jr. If Jason Jett gets the, could be a battle of cruiserweights, or Jonathan Toro could, continue to build his empire by taking out both Rey Mysterio Jr. and Chuck Palumbo in successive rounds. And if he does that, he might actually become quite a favorite. We'll just have to see what happens with that. But AJ Styles, Jindrak, two different regions of the future here in professional wrestling, and we'll just see which one wins out. Another interesting first round matchup as Booker, former world champion, will take on the Sandman. Of course, Booker's the favorite here, but, Sandman is a former ECW world champion, was a battler in the Land of Extreme for a long time, and he could shock Booker here if Booker is not ready for the type of, violent style that Sandman brings to the ring. But also, Sandman has to watch out for, Booker being one of the best wrestlers in the world, and honestly, you could consider him the wrestler of the year so far, with his long world title reign and, several successive title defenses and big matches. So we'll just have to see who moves on here in the Mayhem tournament. Of course, whoever wins this match could, lead to several interesting second round matches. Booker could face the challenge of the future in AJ Styles. Could be a heel versus heel battle of Booker and Mark Jindrak. Mark Jindrak, Sandman would probably be a wild diverging styles or would so frankly AJ Styles and Sandman. So some very interesting second round matches that could happen as a result here. Speaking of interesting first round matchups, Keenan will take on Kaz in a match that will probably be a banger, even if Keenan is the big favorite here as a former world champion, even though he hasn't had the best year so far. Kaz is again one of those people who I've not pushed. I mean, honestly, should probably be farther up in the card, but lack of mic skill plus, just again, he's stuck in that sort of mid card / upper card relays where I tried to push him for a couple weeks, but then other stuff becomes more important, and he has to be sort of unavoided, which is why there'll be some changes coming for the new year, which will hopefully give him and people like him on the roster some more time on TV. Regardless, Kaz is a big underdog here, but he, was a cruiserweight champion, big challenger for the U.S. Championship, and a great wrestler, so he could totally pull off the upset here without a problem. And whoever wins that match will be facing the winners of sort of a throwback match here, as Kidman faces Dean Malenko. Of course, these two men faced off multiple times here at WCW in the cruiserweight division and in other big matches. But now, it's a different time to WCW, as Dean Malenko is now a veteran, possibly in the last run of his career, and Billy Kidman has had a very successful, last couple years since turning heel and becoming, a part of the Triumvirate. But, Malenko could prove once again, that he is, the veteran here and pull off a huge upset, or Kidman could prove that it's his time now and, show Dean Malenko that he's now the leader when it comes to that generation of cruiserweight wrestlers. But we'll just have to see. And of course, it could lead to several big matches as, Keenan could take on Kidman in a big rematch of their little feud from a few months ago. Kaz could take on Kidman in a sort of huge heel cruiserweight, bastard battle. Dean Malenko could get the big win and take on Keenan in an interesting match of former horsemen, or Dean Malenko could take on Kaz, which would just be an awesome match. But any of those four matches, honestly, will be really good. So we'll just have to see what happens here in the Mayhem tournament. And another interesting first-round matchup, as Paul London, the current U.S. champion, and former tag team champion and former cruiserweight champion, I think. I'd have to double-check that. We'll take on a bit of a newcomer here in WCW, simply Johnny Devine, who has, competed some in the cruiserweight division, competed some in the tag team division, helped out Jeff Jarrett get big wings. But, honestly, just, been a bit of an irritant to other people in WWE so far, and have a chance to take on Paul London. A match that, should be, as I saw Margaret outside interference, a really great cruiserweight battle. As both these men are, smaller wrestlers, but are both really talented, and are both looking to move on to the next round in the main tournament. Paul London, to prove he's, rising up to the top, and simply Johnny Vine to mark his place here in WCW. And then finally, our final first round matchup, it's Jeff Jarrett versus Ken Anderson. Of course, Jeff Jarrett, one of the top seeds here, one of the most successful wrestlers here in WCW, multi-time world champion, member of the Horsemen, the NWO, the Horsemen again, and now the Chosen Few, the leader of that. Has been also very successful here, even in my version of WCW, two-time tag champion, US champion, now rising to become a top heel. But he's facing, Kenny Anderson, a newcomer here in WCW, but a young wrestler who has a bright future, but who has a very tough challenge in the first round. But of course, Ken Anderson could pull off the huge upset here. Anything can happen. And, this could lead some interesting second round matches. Of course, Ken Anderson pulls off the upset. He'll be facing, the Chosen Few once again in the second round. And that would be interesting to see how they would react. Or he could be facing Paul London in a battle of young baby faces. If, Jeff Jarrett gets the win, he could be facing Paul London after he took out a Chosen Few member. So that might lead to some revenge. Or it could be a Chosen Few battle as he takes on somebody Johnny Vine. And the question would be, would Johnny Vine just, lay down for his leader or want to move on himself? So again, a very big tournament here in WCW, and could lead to, several interesting finishes. And again, as we look over, so, again, here's the actual, again, could lead to some very interesting finals. And in-game, just to show you guys, again, just like last year where I ended up doing the finals as forfeits, I set it up for our tournaments. Where are our tournaments? They're there. I have the tournament all set up here, so just see what happens here on Nitro and Revolution over the weeks in November. But again, so what'll happen here is the predictions contest will be open until basically Nitro on the first Nitro of November in game gets posted, and until then you can post your predictions, follow the instructions I put on at the start of the video, and just again choose who you want to win, who you think will win, who you'd like to win, all that fun stuff, regardless. But again, we'll be back to Nitro, back to the schedule of the fallout of Fall Brawl, including Sean O'Haire retaining the title. Shane Helms become number one contender, and all other fun stuff after the next video. But that's for now. So if you enjoyed this, go ahead and give it a like, comment below while you're liking it or enjoying, and subscribe to the channel for lots of TEW 2020 content. Mainly the series at the moment, but hopefully some other stuff soon. But that's it for now, so talk to you later, and adios. Have a good one.